Hi, I'm Dr. Shantae, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. You know, back in the 90s, Boys to Men had a song, I think it was called Water Runs Dry or something like that. And the first line of the song was, "We don't even talk anymore." And we don't. We don't talk anymore. So many of us have become over reliant on cell phone communication to the point where our ability to communicate, especially during moments of conflict, has deteriorated. It has diminished greatly. So many of us just really don't know how to have hard conversations. We don't know how to be uncomfortable. We don't know how to deal with the discomfort of conflict. And so I think our over reliance on the phone has created this easy way out, a way for us to just cut people off, walk away, block, ghost, unfriend, and that way it frees us from the discomfort of having to have conversation. And I recently posted a YouTube short that said one of my pet peeves is so many of us have gotten to the point where we're making decisions without having conversations. Something that could be resolved or remedied with a simple conversation, with a series of sit downs. And many of us are just like, nope, that's it. And anytime I bring this up, people immediately get defensive. I don't owe anybody anything. I'm protecting my peace and I don't have to talk to anybody I don't want to talk to. That's true. That fair. But as I often say, eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind, right? So if everybody had that mindset, that means that they don't have to talk to you either. They don't owe you the courtesy and the dignity of conversation and communication and respect either, right? So I don't think that's a scalable approach. And a lot of times when we think that we are protecting our peace, sometimes it's not that. Sometimes we're protecting our ego. Sometimes we're protecting ourselves from the accountability of having to face somebody and own up to our part of the conflict. And what this is creating is this social decay where we are starting to treat people like profiles. I think a lot of this spills over from dating app culture. And so we're starting to treat people with real feelings like disposable paper towels. And I can tell you from the data, from the research on loneliness, and from my experience coaching people through mental health challenges, good friendships are not disposable. Having people that are there for you, having a village, having community, having meaningful, healthy human connections, those things are not a dime a dozen. Those things are actually hard to come by. And so by the end of this video, I'm going to try to convince you to release your reliance on devices and show you how to return to conversations. Keep watching. So before I even start down this path, let me hit you with the disclaimers, okay? Let's get that out of the way up front. First of all, I am not at any point in this video going to convince you to stay in any sort of abusive, toxic, oppressive, mentally debilitating situation. I am not at any point in this video going to encourage you to engage with people who don't have your best interest at heart. Because in those situations, protecting your peace and your safety is paramount. So we're not about to have that conversation. So let me just disabuse you of any notion that I am encouraging you to confront issues or confront people who don't genuinely have your best interest at heart. Okay? Okay. So how did we get here? I have my trusty notes. There's a lot of reasons how we got here, but here are three that jump out to me. The first being the paradox of choice. And the paradox of choice is popularized by Barry Schwartz. And it is basically when you have an overabundance of options, so too many things to choose from, and it creates anxiety and frustration and dissatisfaction. And so there's a lot of next, next, next. I don't like that. Next. Sometimes this happens. I would probably say the earlier iteration of this was probably when people got cable for the first time, and all of a sudden, because who grew up in the 80s and had a floor model television with a physical dial that you had to go click, 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 and we basically had 2, 5, 7, 9, 11. Sometimes we got 32. But you really had to kind of, work for those extra channels. But then cable TV came along and it was just the paradox of choice, right? Too many options, like nothing's on TV, but everything's on TV, right? And so the way that this plays out in the way that we engage with one another is that whether it's on a dating app or whether it's on social media, we have this presumption that there are so many options. There's so many options for friendship. There's so many options for romantic partnership. There's so many options and so many people to connect in the world. And we say things like, there's 6 billion people in the world, so I'm sure that I can find my people. Tell that to lonely people. Tell that to lonely people. How, what do they say? There's water everywhere, but nothing to drink. Yeah, there's people, but the ability to connect with people, to find camaraderie with people, to find commonality with people, to find enough common ground to try to forge some sort of friendship or partnership or romantic relationship. Results may vary, okay? A lot of people are just discounting people out of hand. At the first sign of trouble or at the first sign of some sort of misunderstanding, rather than talk it out, rather than ask questions, rather than show up with curiosity, rather than judgment, and we'll get into the solutions on the back half of this, rather than do that, it's just next, block, unfriend, mute, and the tension never gets resolved. And here's the thing, if you have never been to therapy, let me give you something that almost every therapist will tell you. Wherever you go, there you are. You can't get away from yourself. Okay. So if you don't learn to resolve conflicts and you're like, oh, I'm going on to the next person, you have also not learned how to resolve conflicts with the next person and the next person and the next person. And so it is really to your benefit and advantage to learn how to resolve or at a bare minimum communicate, because everything doesn't have to end badly. Sometimes it just ends. Okay. Some things do end amicably. Sometimes people just kind of jointly decide, hey, we gave it the old college try, no hard feelings, put her there. And that's just the end of it. But it doesn't have to be this undignified exit when a conversation could be had. Another reason this happens is something called barrier aggression. So barrier aggression is when there's a barrier that keeps you from immediately dealing with the consequences of your actions, right? And so this happens on the road, like road rage. The car is the barrier. So you people blowing their horn, giving people the finger, talking crap, because more times than not, especially if there's not a stop sign or a stoplight, for them to pull up to you, everybody's brave in the safety and the comfort of the car, right? But then you get to a stoplight or you get to a stop sign and somebody pulls up for real, the energy is real different. So in the case of our phones, that's the barrier. During the presidential debates of 2024, before we got to the election, one of the candidates very famously said, if so-and-so has something to say to me, they want to talk about me, say it to my face. And then when they had a debate and there was an opportunity to say those things to her face, he did not say them. So again, everybody's brave behind the keyboard. Everybody's brave behind the cell phone or behind the anonymity of their profile, behind the fake username and the fake profile picture. And it's like, oh, they'll never find me, or I'll never face the consequences of my actions. And so as a result, barrier aggression increases the likelihood that people are going to be meaner, that there's going to be cruelty in the comments, that there's going to be subtweets and shade thrown on social media, or book-long paragraphs written in the text messages, because you know that you don't actually have to face this person and you don't actually have to talk to this person. And so that's one of the reasons. Now, I will say this. Pro tip, free advice. There's someone that I know who has a fairly high profile, okay? So they're not like A-list famous, but they're a public figure. And what a lot of people don't know about this individual is that they have family members who are on the other side of the law. And I mean way on the other side of the law, like cartel level other side of the law. And while this public figure doesn't have any dealings with or any sort of meaningful connection to those relatives very much keep up with this public figure because that's their family. And sometimes people say mean things in the comments to this public figure. And I often think to myself, I wonder what this person be saying this if they knew who their relatives were. Like, you just never know who's watching your comments. And even though the person you're saying it to might not have any inclination whatsoever to retaliate against you, you don't know who they're related to. You don't know who they're protected by. You just don't know, you know? So, pro tip, it's better to show up as though this was going to be published on LinkedIn or to your boss or, to people in your community that you care about. And truth be told, this has also happened because a lot of people who do say these hateful, malicious, mean type comments and what have you under the cloak of anonymity or this is never going to catch up with me have been fired, have been outed because people will dig. People have the time. They will go and find out where you live and who you're married to and where your kids go to school. Like, yeah. So barrier aggression is another factor that complicates our ability to be able to just have mature, adult, civil conversations with one another with respect to resolving conflict. And then there's just good old-fashioned conflict avoidance. Some people, the minute they feel the tension rising, the minute they feel the temperature changing, the minute they start to feel the anxiety creep in, have not built the capacity to move through that other than avoidance. And so they'll shut the conversation down, they'll change the subject, they'll walk away. And like I said, wherever you go, there you are. Okay, so you can run, but you really cannot hide. And conflict avoidance can be rooted in so many things: fear of abandonment, fear of retaliation, fear of confrontation, lack of models. And so a lot of us did not grow up in the household where arguments were resolved amicably. Okay, as a matter of fact, many of us grew up in households where there was like this big conflict or this major issue, and then somebody in the conflict shows up the next day like nothing ever happened. Like those words were not said. We'll be like, your breakfast is on the table. And it's like, what? Just no resolution, no apology, no movement towards forgiveness. Just, I said what I said and that it is what it is. And so sometimes we just don't have any modeling to demonstrate what healthy engagement in conflict looks like. So let's talk about that. So healthy relationships have conflict. That said, if any of this is happening, do not engage. I have a trusty list. If somebody is abusive, they don't have to be physically abusive. They can be psychologically abusive. They can be mentally cruel, stonewalling, silent treatment. Now, don't get me wrong. It is a healthy conflict resolution tool to say, I need some space. I'm not ready to have this conversation right now. Give me an hour. Let's talk about this tomorrow. That is healthy, but silent treatment, I'm blocking you without letting you know that I need space. Again, making decisions without having conversations, and you are just heat of the moment or trying to be retaliatory. I'm hurt, so you're gonna hurt. Neither one of us is getting a good sleep tonight. Which reminds me, I think it was like some reality show, or maybe it was a commercial, or maybe it was even a TikTok. But do you know what I'm talking about? There's this woman who was standing in the hallway with a cookie sheet. I ain't getting no sleep cause of y'all. Y'all not gonna get no sleep cause of me, period. Like, so sometimes it's like that. So when people are there, that is not the time to engage. Okay, when somebody is being spiteful, mean, retaliatory, this is not the time to be trying to resolve conflict. When somebody is being pedantic, somebody who is pedantic is, well, technically, Well, but you're using the word wrong. No, I can't move forward because this word means this, and the way that you're using it is completely out of context. And so if you go back to the original Greek of the term, this person is not trying to resolve conflict in good faith. They're not. They are trying to derail the conversation by forcing some technicality and making that technicality the major issue rather than the minor issue. And the person that they are engaging with gets so mentally exhausted that they're like, you know what? Yeah, I'm out. I'm okay. You got it. And then they get up and walk away, which was the point. Do not engage with somebody who is trying to win rather than somebody who's trying to resolve the issue. In couples counseling, the best of the conflict resolutions approach it from this is me and you, this is us against the issue, against the problem, rather than I'm trying to own you. Because the difference between an opponent and an enemy is that an opponent wants you to lose, an enemy wants you to suffer. And neither of those has a place in healthy conflict resolution because why do I have to be hurt in order for you to be okay? Why is my demise necessary for you to feel like there was a resolution? Why do you feel the need to win? Okay. So anybody who approaches the conflict from that perspective, do not engage. And don't engage with somebody who's being demeaning. Okay, this is where you can set boundaries because as soon as somebody starts with the name calling, you're effing stupid, or calling you out of your name, raising their voice and talking down to you and shouting down. Nope. No, no. Because there's no conversation to be had. There's no conversation to be had. So, under those conditions, do not engage. But healthy conflict resolution looks like this, okay? Healthy conflict resolution is when both people, A, have each other's best interest at heart, meaning I care about you, you care about me, I'm not trying to hurt you, and you're not trying to hurt me. That's one. Number two, we care about this construct that we have built. I care about the friendship. I care about the marriage. I care about the community that we've built. I care about the connection that we have. So, number one, I care about you. Number two, I have a vested interest in preserving what we have built. Number three, and this is important. Let me tell you something. You are not always going to agree. You're not always going to see it the same way. You are not always going to want to go to the same place or want to go in the same direction. But this is where it's important to talk about your non-negotiables, right? And this comes up where in politically divided families, okay? Because one person might think that we're talking about politics and policies, and the other person is like, no, we have gone beyond politics and policies. We're talking about people. We're talking about humanity. We're talking about families. So in those situations, it's important to understand where the line is, okay? For some people, they avoid it altogether. They're like, in order for us to keep having lunch on Tuesdays, we can't talk about dad. In order for us to keep having lunch on Tuesdays, these are the topics that are off the table. In order for us to keep having happy holidays, I can't follow you on Facebook. So boundary setting is really important. Like it's important to understand what's on the table, what's off the table. It's important to address the conflict at hand. This is one of the myriad reasons why I no longer coach couples, because what I found out is that most couple conflicts, they are having the same argument 12 years later in a different form. Like, in other words, rather than us talking about this thing that happened yesterday in 2026, we now have to continue once again to revisit this thing that happened back in 2012 when you didn't pick me up when you went to go see Brenda, or you went to go see Larry. And because you went to go see Brenda and Larry in 2012, we still arguing about this issue in 2026. God, that is not healthy conflict resolution. That is not it. That's not the one. Okay. So healthy conflict resolution is, let's address the conflict that is on the table without scaling it to things that happened 7 years ago. And it's not even to say that it doesn't have relevance, right? Like, our conflict might be as a result of how dad treated you when you were younger versus how dad treated me when I was younger. That might be the root of it, but we're here now. We're here now. And more times than not, the real issue is with dad, who's usually not even in the conversation. So sometimes we're arguing about people and things that aren't even in the room, okay? Because it's you and I that have to figure out what we're going to do in this situation with the connection that we have in order for us to move forward. I think it is healthiest to show up with curiosity. Meaning, can you clarify what you meant by that? I want to make sure I understand. Or, if you expected this, at what point were you going to communicate that? Because I had no idea that that's how you were thinking or that's what you were expecting. And so, since we didn't have a conversation about it, I was confused. Can you kind of clarify what your intentions were? Which is very different than, how the F you expect me to read your effing mind? You see how there's a difference? There's a different tone, there's a different approach. Like, one is kind of like curious and clarifying, and the other one is accusatory and what have you. And then here's the sixth part. Your emotions absolutely have a place in conflict, because sometimes conflict makes you angry, it makes you sad, it breaks your heart, it disappoints you. I think it is important to understand your feelings before engaging the conflict. I think it's important to understand how you feel, because it's important for you to name those feelings in the conflict. When you said this, I felt so diminished. I felt so small. When you didn't include me, I felt so insulted, because I was by your side. I've spent hours helping you prepare and listening to you and prepping you for practice. And when the big moment came, you completely left me out of the conversation. You completely left me out of the thank yous. And I felt used. I felt hurt. I felt betrayed. It's important to understand your feelings before assessing the conflict, before engaging the conflict, because when you don't, feelings come out during the conflict and they're fresh and they're raw and you know, so I think it's important to understand how you feel before you engage the conflict. And the last thing I'll say, even though there's much more to be said, but we only got so much time in the video, at least in this video, I try not to be too long-winded. The time matters. The time matters. Everybody has a different conflict resolution approach. So some people are, I'm not going to bed with this. We finna talk about this right now, okay? And then there are other people that are like, no, I'm too upset. I'm too tired. I'm too emotionally spent. I need to sleep on it. I need to get my words together. I need a beat. I need a beat. Okay. And so when you have somebody that's ready right now and somebody who needs to take a lap, it's important to jointly agree to a time to discuss this. Okay. Because the person who wants to resolve it right now, no good will come of it, because in the words of Rob Bass, it take two to make a thing go right. It take two to make a thing go right. And so if you are fired up and ready to go and this person is depleted and diminished, no good will come of this. No good will come of this, okay? And then at the same time, if you are the person that's like, yeah, I need a beat, I need a moment, okay? You can't go away forever. You can't go away forever because the elephant is still in the room. So at some point you have to come back and address it. Okay. So it is also fair to give the person who's ready to go a time. Okay. Let's talk about this on Wednesday. Let's talk about this on Friday at happy hour, when I get off work. But try to find some compromise, some meeting in the middle as to when you're going to resolve the conflict. So that's going to do it for me. I if you I have been on a little bit of a tear. This is probably the third or fourth video in a row that I have created about the way that we engage with one another, because I don't think we're paying attention. I don't think we're paying attention to who we're becoming. I don't think we're paying attention to what and how conflict is shaping us. I don't think that we're paying attention. And more than that, because so many people are lonely and searching, or don't have friends, or don't have people to talk to about their feelings and what have you, this business of just treating people like they're disposable, treating people like their profiles, left, left, swipe, swipe, nope, nope, nope. I've got infinite choices. It's going to be somebody. Yeah, that might seem plausible in theory, but in real life, that's not how the data is shaking out. And so I am concerned that we are losing our ability to just really have mature, adult, civil conversations. And I realize that so many things inform this. I try to take a trauma-informed approach to most of my videos because I believe that all of us have experienced some form of trauma. I know I have. Um, so I try to keep that in mind. And there's no video that will account for all the things, okay? But I'm trying to make a little bit of inroads. This is for people who are willing to do that work. The reason why I'm a coach and not a therapist, the reason why I'm a coach and not a counselor, is because I realize that I work best with people who are ready to go forward. I work best with people who are ready to do something about it, okay? Because we can talk all day about the problems. We can talk all day and we can unpack them and we can be right about being wronged, and there's value in that, okay? And understanding that and connecting those dots and what have you. But my question is always, so what are you going to do with that information? And you don't have to do anything with it. But that's what makes me a coach, because I'm like, given all that you know, and given the life that you want to live, and given the gap between where you are and what you want for your life in terms of relationships and all the rest of it, how do we close the gap? And that's what I'm about. That's what this platform is about. That's what this video is about, is helping us get a little bit closer to closing the gap between where we are and what we want. I'll see you guys next time.